Welcome to another edition of the Brian Hornback Experience. This is episode 75, and I have an elected official who will be on the ballot May the 3rd. That's the Republican primary. Early voting is April 13th to the 28th. And I have School Board Chair Kristi Kristy. Kristi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. So you've been through almost 4 years of serving on the school board, and you're asking for another term. Have you lost your mind?
Sometimes my family asks that, but I do love South Knoxville, and I love serving our family. So,
and you've been just to introduce folks to you. School board's not a full-time job, and you're in the medical field, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, I've worked in pediatrics since I have triplets that are almost 23.
Wow.
So I have worked in that field since they were babies, infants. So.
And when you got elected 4 years ago, they were in high school, right?
They had just graduated.
They had just graduated. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now you're no stranger to South Knoxville. You're no stranger to the schools. You've been in Knox County all your life, right? Pretty much.
Well, we moved here 25 years ago, so
okay.
We did raise our family in South Knoxville and in South Knoxville schools.
And you've been a volunteer in Knox County schools since about 2004 or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What all have you?
Started kindergarten.
So what all have you done from when the triplets went to kindergarten until they graduated? What all volunteer capacities have you had in the past in South Knoxville schools?
Oh wow. Well, I've served in the PTAs at every school they've been in. Bonnie Tate Elementary, Southville Middle, and Southville High School. Just pretty much everything a parent volunteer does. I've fed teachers, I fed kids, we've class parties, field trips. I mean, you name it.
Right.
We've been there for it. So, yeah.
Well, that's fantastic, and I know you've got I came to your kickoff a couple of weeks ago, and you had a lot of folks from South Knoxville that showed up that have relied on you over the years to do the directing and the volunteer work. And I even saw a former school board member, one that I served with. He was actually chairman for a couple of years when I was on the board. And that was Jim McLean. So you've got Jim McLean support.
I didn't realize that you served on the board with Jim.
Yep. Jim's last 2 years, I guess, because I was in the 5th district, so we were in opposite terms. So I served with Jim from 2000 to 2002, and then Robert Bratton was elected in 2002 because Jim opted not to run for election in 2000, chose not to run for re-election in 2002. So Jim and I served from 2000 to 2002, and I believe he was a chairman both years, but that was 20 plus years ago. So yeah, Jim supported you 4 years ago, and he's supporting you again now, right?
Yes.
So that's good. But so you served about 3 years as a regular board member, and then in September, everybody got kind of shocked when Kristi Kristy got 5 votes to be school board chair. And man, what an interesting year it is to be school board chair.
Right? Yeah.
So
it's definitely been interesting. That's for sure.
So we're recording this at the tail end of spring break, and I guess the news came out early this week that the students can go back to school without the mask mandate.
Right.
So I know that's still kind of in flux, but he's lifted that up. The federal judge has lifted that until mediation goes on. Has there been any? I know you probably can't talk about it, but has there been any mediation going on recently?
Recently, well, the board had voted for Jason Myers and myself to, I guess, negotiate to a degree, which we had done some back and forth with that. Didn't really get anywhere. But I am glad that it will be the entire board in mediation, because you know it's really hard to predict what people are going to support or not support. I mean, you think you know, but you know how that goes. So.
Well, you know, it would be kind of difficult for you and Jason Myers to come up with an agreement, and then you come back to the board for a vote, and then it failed on a 4-4 and 1 pass vote. Y'all have had a lot of passes.
Right.
Y'all have had a lot of passes here recently.
Yeah, we have. And, you know, I had even spoken with the law department about that before the judge had, you know, said that we needed to mediate, and had said, you know, I don't know if this is the most ideal situation. So I'm glad that it will be a board discussion, like I said, because, you know, you can't predict what other board members are going to want.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting, though, because, you know, mediations are typically not public.
Right.
So, you know,
and
there will be some challenges there.
And this one will be quasi-public, right?
Right. So
y'all are not going to live stream it, but it still be a public meeting where people could still come if they want to, right?
Right. It's my understanding that, you know, we may go in and out of executive session, right? So,
right.
You know, we would go in, the law department would tell us what's happening, or, you know, what the offer was and their opinions on it, but then we would come back out and discuss it in a public meeting. So,
yeah. You got any idea whether the plaintiffs, they're the plaintiffs, right? The people that it sued.
right.
Will they actually be there, or will their lawyer be there, or do you have any idea how that's going to happen?
I have no idea. I mean, I assume that they will be there.
Right.
But, you know, I honestly don't know. And I think that, you know, the governor was in that suit too. And I think that we might have to, it's my understanding that there might be a representative from the governor's office that is participating as well.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
it's definitely uncharted territory.
Well, and
at least for us. So.
It's a fluid process. So, you know, let's go on and talk about something more pleasant. Let's talk about the fact that you and the board, your vice chair, Evity Satterfield, Patty Bounds, and Betsy Henderson led the superintendent search committee that just pretty much concluded their work. And the board voted, you had 3 finalists, but then one of them dropped out in Georgia. And so you had 2 finalists. You had Dr. Clark from down in Bradley County, and then you had Dr. John Ryswick, and the board selected Dr. Ryswick, a Knox County guy, chief academic officer. I guess I call him assistant superintendent, but I don't think that's his title.
No, it is.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yep.
But so talk about that process. Talk about what you now that the board has decided that Dr. Ryswick is going to be the next superintendent. Kind of talk about what you hope happens with Dr. Ryswick in the future, and where the board. I assume he's still taking office. He's still taking the position July the 1st or whenever that is happening. But
so what will happen now is, you know, we'll have to negotiate a contract. You know, one was extended to him through the law department, and he'll have his attorney look at it, and we'll come back and negotiate that. And of course, the board will have to vote on that.
Right.
So timeline, you know, I'm not sure. Definitely will be, you know, by the time Bob leaves office.
Right, which is June the 30th, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of doing that. You know, the good news about it is, you know, he is already here, so he can start working with the superintendent on transitioning if that's what they're both agreeable to. So that should be helpful. I think he has great ideas. He knows our community. He knows our schools. So I think he will do really well.
Well, he still has a child in the Knox County school system as well.
Yes.
So he's got one that's I'm not sharing anything that's not already public knowledge. He's already said he's got a child at Central High School. So, I think that, I think that's a positive. Granted, Bob is a little bit older. His kids had graduated. His wife had retired. But I do think it's important to have somebody whose kids are in the system, who is a stakeholder, who has some skin in the game, so to speak. So what else, we get past, we remove the debate about masks, and hopefully next year is going to be different than this year.
Right.
We get a new superintendent. How's things looking in South Knoxville, school building wise? Are there some needs? Are there some structural needs that need to be addressed in South Knoxville over the next 4 years?
Well, we have aging schools all over the district.
Right.
We have done a lot of upgrades. We air conditioning in our gym at the high school recently, which was a blessing. There's a lot of things like that. Phone systems, internet systems. We have the new pedestrian bridge at the high school.
I've still got to come see that. I still got to come see that bridge, because I know what that road looked like before a pedestrian bridge, and so I've got to come over there and check that pedestrian bridge out.
When my kids started at the high school in 2014, we actually had a student that was hit in that crosswalk. Did
not realize that.
Yeah. So it was, I would say, a blessing. We were all really excited about that. I know that administration and parents were really excited when that was completed. And yeah, you need to come over and see it. It's a great structure. It's keeping kids out of the street. So we're really happy with it. That's great.
So, New Hopewell, I know 20 years ago, New Hopewell was growing at the seams, and y'all, you've got a principal over there, Brandon Pratt, that when I was on the board started his teaching career at Cedar Bluff Intermediate. Went on to be a principal in a few West Knoxville schools, but I saw where recently you got a new playground at New Hopewell.
Yeah. So we had a very generous donation from the Boyd Foundation. There were a lot of donations.
Right.
We had a ribbon cutting last month on that. So we're really excited about that. He's doing a great job at New Hopewell. Really happy with him and his leadership there at that school. And, his advocacy was what made that playground happen in the first place. So he's definitely working hard and, just putting his heart and soul into it.
That's great. How is Gap Creek? I know it's been a smaller school. The population's been a little bit smaller over the years, but is Gap Creek still holding pretty steady?
It is. Good. It's still small. We have a lot of the Johnson University.
The students, the students of the students, right?
Right. The students of the students are the students of the staff. There is development out that way. I expect that we'll see numbers go up there and at Gap Creek and New Hopewell both in the next year or two, because there is a lot of growth out that way.
And then Mount Olive has had they had their principal who passed away unexpectedly, and so I'm sure that's
Moreland Heights.
Moreland Heights. Oh, yes. Sorry about that. Yeah. Sorry about that, Mount Olive. Moreland Heights. So I'm assuming that the transition is going well there.
Yeah, they have Josh Van Pelt's their new principal, and he was an assistant principal there. So he had worked with Brandy there. I mean, they've had a rough year, but he had that stability. I mean, he had been in the school. He knew the teachers, knew the families, knew the students, and he's done a really great job as well. Just supporting, and it's been a rough year.
Right.
It's been a rough year.
Yeah. Besides the obvious, right.
Especially rough for Moreland Heights.
Yeah.
This year.
So interestingly enough, as school board chair, you kind of have to look at the whole county, right? But we've got 5 school board members up for reelection. 3 of them are saying, I've had enough. I'm going home. That's not exactly what they said. That's my spin on it. But Patty Bounds is not running again. Ebony Satterfield's not running again, and Virginia Babb's not running again. Now, interestingly enough, Virginia Babb is not running, and she's made no secret of that. She's not running because she doesn't really feel like she is a Republican. She doesn't necessarily feel like she's a Democrat. And the state legislature last year said that school boards got to be partisan. We went through this back in the 80s and the 90s when I was coming along in politics. We elected our school board members by partisan election. We elected our school superintendent by partisan election. Mildred Doyle was a Republican. Earl Hoffmeister was a Democrat. Earl beat Mildred. It was kind of crazy back then. But and up until in 92, the law changed. It said that school board members will be nonpartisan, and they will elect or they will appoint the superintendent, who will no longer be elected. Now, this last year, the legislature, in their infinite wisdom, some sarcasm there, said that we will have partisan elections. Obviously, you're a Republican, and so you're on the ballot as a Republican. Your voting record is Republican. But do you have heartburn one way or the other? Does it bother you one way or another that it's partisan? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I hate to hear that, that would keep someone from running again.
Right.
And Virginia's a friend as well. Most of us, people don't really always believe it, but most of us are pretty friendly with each other outside of meetings. It may not come across that way in meetings sometimes.
Right. Oh, I've been there. I know.
Yeah, I think that we are probably like each other a lot better than some of their fans or you know how that goes.
Oh yeah.
So I do hate to hear that anybody isn't running because of that. Being in South Knoxville, I'm just going to be honest. It's something people always wanted to know anyway.
Well, and that is interesting, because when you got elected 4 years ago, you were running against someone who identified as a Democrat. So I'm sure that even though you were running nonpartisan 4 years ago, as you knocked on doors and went to community meetings,
people asked.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say, now our districts are very different across Knox County. You know that.
Right.
And it's just something that I have been asked frequently when I was campaigning the last time, and even, during the last 4 years. So I honestly didn't have strong feelings one way or the other about it, with the, exception that you hate for good people not to run because of it.
Well, and I told Virginia after I found out that Virginia wasn't running and why she wasn't running, she and I talked, and I said, well, sadly, I really thought that she and Ebony Satterfield could probably get elected as an independent. But, obviously I was, one, late to the party with that advice, and two, it was, I really try not to change anybody's mind, because they're the ones that got to put their names on the ballot.
Well, and I will tell you, we know this. I mean, we've seen it across the state and country. It has been a difficult 2 years to be on the school board.
Right.
Anywhere,
oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So if something like that, that in itself might not keep people from running in the state. I don't know, or running again, but the combination of maybe the events of the last 2 years, and now you have this, it is a lot to add on to it.
So what amazes me about your situation is, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, and you don't have to respond if you don't want to. It's just my thoughts. But the interesting thing about your situation is that when we look at the other races that are going on, You know, we see people who are polarized. They're my friends, but we see folks who have been outspoken one way or another on the whole pandemic issue, and we see that they wind up with an opponent on the other side. What I don't really understand is how you generated an opponent when you've pretty much been you've really been working in pediatrics. You've really been kind of center of the road up until the last 4 or 5 months when the federal judge's order came down, and then you've been pretty vocal. But throughout most of the last 2 years, you've been pretty much middle of the road, as I assume you have to be from your somewhat medical background.
Right.
And so, why did somebody decide that they want to challenge you that come from one extreme or the other on the whole issue, or do you even have an answer to that?
I don't.
Right.
I don't. You know, right now I'm just focused on, you know, serving South Knoxville.
Right.
And managing my campaign the best I can.
Well, and I hope that whole issue doesn't. I'm hoping. Obviously, we're early in the process, but hopefully that will not be the issue in your reelection, because you know I do think that you've tried with everything you've got to represent both sides of your district, and you've really not been you've not been, in my opinion, and I watched most 90% of all the school boards. You really haven't been in that situation. So starting to
well, and I think it's important to note that, you know, when we started school in 2020, we were in a much different place, right?
Right.
And so, you know, the goal then was to keep the doors open.
Right.
You know, we didn't know what we know now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's the other thing is you know you have to be willing to you know adapt as situations change. So, you know.
So
at the end of the day, we all just do the best we can.
Right. So it'll be interesting. We get past May the 3rd, then you're unopposed August the 4th, and then we. Oh, you're not? No, you're not. Actually, you're right. I did. I have interviewed your Democrat opponent. I'm sorry, but yeah. So you've got so you got to get through the May 3rd Republican primary. Early voting's April 13th through the 28th, and then you got a Democrat opponent August the 4th. Right. Early voting's July 15th through the 30th. So you get past August the 4th, and then you're going to wind up with 3 new board members. How do you, I mean, as board chair and provided, you know, September 1st, they elect another chair again for another year. Not sure if you're going to try to do that again or not. I wouldn't sign up for it, but that's your call. So, I mean, there's going to be, so you got a new superintendent that started July 1st. You got 3 new board members going to start on September 1st. And so who knows what's going to happen after that.
At least 3. I mean, there's 5 seats up for election.
Right.
So you know you're going to have at least 3 and a new superintendent.
Right. So it's an interesting time. Anything else coming up on the horizon other than, I don't want to talk about the pandemic anymore. Anything else coming up on the horizon that we need to be aware of? That you're aware of?
I don't think so. We're just trying to get through this mediation and get back to some normalcy and welcoming our new superintendent. And you got a budget.
You got a budget here in the next few weeks.
This year's I don't think this is going to be a painful budget year for us. Fortunately, hopefully we can give staff raises again because you know. Well, you know, I think your wife works at one of the schools. I mean, we can never pay them enough, but we've got to just keep advocating for more pay for, you know, our teachers and staff in the schools.
And Mayor Jacobs has been, you've been fortunate in your 4 years on the board to work along Mayor Jacobs. He's been He's been fairly supportive of schools in his past
He has
budgets.
been supportive. He has. I will say that. I feel like he's been supportive. And, I feel like we've got a good relationship with county commission
Right.
now.
Right.
That's not always the case.
Right.
You go to TSBA and you hear it all the time. Everybody's at odds with their county commissioners, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel that way in Knox County. I feel like, I could approach any one of our county commissioners for something if I needed to. So, that's a blessing, too. I do think that we have a really good group of people right now in office.
Well, and I do believe that in the time you've been board chair, I do believe Mayor Jacobs is supportive of you as chair. I believe he's supportive of the schools in general, and I think that's a good indication of what you've been able to do in kind of calming the waters. So, I'm assuming you're just doing the typical campaign activities. You got any events coming up in the near future that people need to be any campaign events?
Well, we are working on some meet and greets, but we
Good.
do not have those on
Sure.
the calendar yet.
Well, when you get those, let us know, and I'll come out and snap some pictures and let people know that. And if people need to find you, you're on Facebook under Kristi, Kristy 4FOR Kids KIDS on Facebook. I do appreciate you being on the Brian Hornback Experience, episode 75.
Thanks for having me.
And we will talk to you again, I'm sure, after May and going into August. And good luck, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.